Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 657, written by Master Advantage 5833, the most ominous neighborhood in the world. To begin, I was not high when these events happened. I was in a car with a few of my friends driving around to find a spot to park and smoke. These events took place a couple of months ago. I'm a college student in a very small North Carolina town. It's a population of about 3,000 people, and the town is less than 3 square miles, with most of it being one long road leading to and from the big cities. The demographic here is pretty much exclusively old people. One thing to support this is the amount of funeral homes on every corner. My friends and I have always talked about how it's creepy being that it's such a small town, but it makes sense because the people are all much older. One day, the 5 of us pack into our friend's car and start to drive around. We're looking for somewhere that's kinda discreet since it's still daylight out, but not just blatantly on someone's property. We pull into a neighborhood that looks pretty typical. Simple one-story houses that all look the same, until they didn't. We turned into a road that split off into a cul-de-sac. The moment we turned onto this road, I got a sinking pit in my stomach, as if we were somewhere we're not supposed to be, like we had broken something in the universe, or accidentally shifted dimensions. I remember looking at my roommate next to me in the back seat and instinctively murmuring, "We shouldn't be here." Each of the houses with the cul-de-sac were extremely unique and different. One was a pretty sunshine yellow, narrow 2-story house. One was a wider and more full blue and purple house. One looked like a normal suburban 1-story beige house, but instead of beige, it was a deep maroon color. And the last one, all the way on the right, was a dark gray house with black trim. Each of the houses were very close together and had different yard decorations, from big extravagant Easter bunnies and Easter eggs, to random gnomes, to Christmas trees, to wagons all over. They were scattered about like landmines. The dark house had shovels scattered about, but no holes in the ground that implied digging. The cul-de-sac had a long, narrow, grassy median/island that you drive around to enter and leave. All of us in the car had an overwhelming urge to leave immediately, so we made our way around the little island. As we got around it, we looked at the dark house again. A man stood on the side of the house, facing us but standing completely still. He was a black man wearing yellow with blue overalls and a dark shadow in front of his face. I don't know if it was hair or some sort of covering, but his face was not visible. We sped off and out of the neighborhood, worried that maybe he'd think we were trespassing and shoot us, something you always have to be prepared for in rural North Carolina. This was the rational worry at the time, but in the moment, we felt an energy so powerful it could have pinned us to the ground if it tried. It felt all-knowing and maybe even evil. We left without issues, but all of us felt the same pit in our stomachs like we saw something we weren't supposed to. The weirdness doesn't stop there though. When recalling the events, our stories all match up until recalling the man in the yard. We all saw someone, but the 5 of us each have a very different description of the person. One of them saw a little girl in a dress, somebody else saw a woman in white, someone else a man with a long beard and a guy wearing what looked like a dark suit. Each recollection of the memory, the person stood frozen in the exact same spot on the side of the house. To this day, we have no idea what we encountered or what exactly happened. It freaked all of us out and we swore to never go back. I'm typing this while it's still extremely fresh. I spent all day, Tuesday, looking for the neighborhood via maps and eventually found it. The neighborhood looked a lot different when seeing the satellite and street views, but the images were from 2013, so I attributed it to that. I decided to go back with my roommate and our friend who was driving that day. Upon pulling into the neighborhood, we all realized it looked very different. The same island and median was there, but it looked like the satellite images I had seen before. We all recalled the houses we had previously seen, particularly referencing the yellow house we had seen that was no longer there. We were all so sure of the yellow house that we were able to recall a conversation about that house. There was one house that was there that we all had a memory of being there the first time. There was another house that my roommate and other friend remembered and said it was where they both saw the person they saw. It was a white house, not the dark house from before. I didn't remember the white house at all, but sure, I could have missed it the first time. However, I know for a fact that I had seen the man by the dark house the first time. There was one house that stood out to us that we didn't remember. It was an eerie look at a brick house that looked like no one had lived there for years. I went back to the neighborhood fully expecting it to look the same way, only for it to be almost completely different. No decorations, houses had been replaced, but the energy was still extremely off. I was prepared for the shift in energy, so I don't think it affected me as much as the others. They both had full body goosebumps and felt sick. I've attached some images here. The first picture is the brick house that wasn't there the first time. The second picture is the white house they both apparently saw the person at. And the third picture is the house we all remember. Case notes, file number 657. My first impression as I'm reading this is that your entire group had memories implanted. Although they weren't a perfect match, and I imagine if someone is able to implant memories, it wouldn't be an exact science. In many science fiction shows, there's technology that can be employed to recreate memories in someone's head exactly, down to minute details. But I don't think, if it's ever possible in real life, that it would be ever so precise. The brain is sort of a quantum computer. There are quantum states that are more like making suggestions rather than programming in binary exact sequences. I don't know if that is ever possible, even for aliens with advanced technology. Now, do I think this is aliens? Well, I'm not sure about that, since you didn't report any time loss. It actually strikes me more as some sort of government experimental area, which makes sense in a rural setting, away from most people. Maybe they were testing some sort of frequency device that was messing and altering with people's perception. That's why everyone saw something different than the other. It would also explain why the houses are back to normal now. The government probably sold that off as a defunct experiment, if that is what it was. Bonus file, written by Substantial Yan, 2086. In Vega, people die in 3's. I come from a village called Vega, on a small island in the Caribbean called Trinidad. We had a saying in my village, when a person dies in Vega, they drag down 2 others with them. Or simply, people die in 3's in Vega. When I was a young boy, an old man from my street named Sundar died. He was drunk and fell out of the passenger door of a truck while it was driving. It rolled over him. Directly across the street from Sundar was a mentally unstable man whose wife and children had left him. He committed suicide by drinking herbicide days after Sundar died. Apparently, he didn't dilute it either. The spot on the sidewalk where he vomited was grass-free for almost a year after he died, while grass grew all around it. I would stand on that clean spot for the bus. A guy from next door also died the following week. 3 men from 3 close-by houses within a few days of each other. Fast forward to last year. My uncle Suk died from a stroke. During the wake, I heard one of my cousins say, "Let's wait and see who Suk is dragging down with him." Then, the following week, another of my relatives died from the virus. Imagine a main street with 3 side streets on the right side. Uncle Suk died in his home, the 3rd house on the 1st street. My other relative died in his home, the 3rd house on the 3rd street. Because it was a virus death, we couldn't gather at the house of mourning for fear of folks catching the virus. So we all gathered at my cousin's house instead, which incidentally was the 3rd house on the 2nd street. During the wake, I realized we were directly in the middle and all 3 houses were in a straight line, even though they were on 3 different streets. I joked that since our uncle died in the house a street down, and our other uncle died in the house a street prior, and the house we were at now was lined up perfectly in the middle, that the people living in that house should be careful to not complete the 3. It was a joke. We all laughed. My cousin from that house died in a car accident the next week. People die in 3's in Vega.